take you so far, but then you have to jump the plank. You know what I mean? Type of a thing to understand the concept. So the idea is like this. So they asked the question, why was the world created to begin with? And so they said like this. They said this entity that we call the creator had this desire to reveal its benevolence, right? Wanted to reveal its benevolence. And what it did was that it wanted to reveal its benevolence. And so what did it do? It created these souls, right? Which were like kalims. And these souls were there to receive this benevolence from the creator, right? And this was the relationship. It was like this, it's like you can imagine like you see a calf, you see a cow with the udders and it has little baby calves all nursing, right? So this is like the relationship of all these souls with the creator. And so what happened? That the creator, the way that the creator built these souls is that these souls had this intelligence in them where over a period of time, they wanted to be like the creator, right? They're receiving this light endlessly and they're like, well, you know what? So there was a process, and the Kabbalists refer to it as bread of shame, right? It's this concept of bread of shame. And so these souls in this endless world were receiving this light endlessly. And what they did was they started to receive this shame, and it came to a point where they kind of like revolted. And they said, you know what? We're not going to receive all the Creator's light. We're going to restrict ourselves. Now, science calls us the Big Bang. In the Kabbalah, they refer to it as the Tzimtzum, right? And so this idea where these souls restricted themselves from receiving God's light, and they said through this restriction, this void was created. And this void that was created between the Creator and these living souls is the reality that we live in today. The whole world, the whole reality comes from this initial restriction. Science calls it the Big Bang. And so out of that came this whole creation, this whole reality that we're in today. And so what is the whole basis? Why is this point is so important? Because we're all connected. Even when you hear the famous midrash, it's like when we're in our mother's womb, there's an angel come and teaches us the entire Torah, right? And before he leaves, he whacks us on the middle of our nose, and that's how we remember this whole thing. But if you take that mashal and you apply it to what I just said, where was this? What are we talking about? We're talking about the original souls that understood that they wanted to be like the Creator. They wanted to be able to express themselves in this world through this idea of bechira, through free will. And so through that desire, the whole world was created, right? And so not only that, these souls took these clay vessels, and these clay vessels became what we now know as body. The Midrashim explain, how the physical body was created, how the head was from Eretz Israel, and different parts, these types of things. So what we're saying is that the whole dynamic of creation is for these souls to basically remove this concept of bread of shame, right? Because we were receiving endlessly in the endless world, but we created a world where we could receive on our own volition, on our own free will. So everything that we see around us is there for time, space, motion. When you look at the 6 days of creation, the seventh day included, when you look at those days, everything that's created is all a part of the imagination of these souls in conjunction with the Creator that wanted to create a world where we could transform ourselves, that we could go from entities of receiving to entities of sharing. Like babies when they're first born, all the mothers here, right? The first thing the baby wants to do is nurse. It wants to receive. That was our relationship in the endless world. We're acting it out on our physical birth. But the physical world that we live in, it gives us the ability to transform ourselves, to be ultimately givers, to be like the Creator, right? So the idea of getting married, the idea of having children, the idea of being in a community, the idea of the obligations of the Torah, the 613 mitzvot, all these things are altruistic things, relationship with God, relationship with our fellow man, relationships with our body, everything outside of the soul, right? Now, often the reality that we live in is convincing us of the total opposite, right? The world that we live in is all about selfishness. It's all about ego. But it has to be that way if we're going to be able to express our free will. It's our partner. The world of selfishness is our partner. Why? Because it's only through that world of selfishness Only through that world of selfishness can we achieve the ultimate purpose on why we were created. And the ultimate purpose of why we were created is to transform ourselves. So everything about this dynamic. So all of us have dreams, right? We have different aspirations. Mr. Rothschild was telling me about his dream of coming here and setting up shop here in Israel, the whole thing, and this whole process. Everyone has dreams. Now we have to ask ourselves, in this context, what we just discussed, what are the dreams for? Why did Hashem give us these dreams? Why did he give us these ambitions? These dreams are an aspect of our purpose of why we were created, because there's a specific aspect of bread of shame that every single soul is supposed to remove. Every single one of us. There's something unique that we are supposed to remove from ourselves. And how does it manifest itself? Through our dreams. And not only through our dreams, even our limitations. Right? There's different limitations. We have personality limitations. Some people may be selfish. Some people may have issues with anger. Some people have issues with laziness. Some people have issues with depression. Some people have issues with all types of, maybe people don't listen well, people talk too much, whatever it is. Right? But the point is saying, we can't look at those things as our enemy, right? Because everything that we were given to, that's why I say everything from Hashem is good. Everything is Tov, right? So from that perspective, everything that we experience and everything that we have is our partner. It's our partner in our success. So all this idea of disliking ourselves and being frustrated with ourselves and why am I this way and why can't I be like this and all these different dynamics, these are all dynamics and mechanisms that come from the outside world, the secular world's understanding of reality, right? Based around Darwin's theory and all these other concepts that exist. But for us as Jews, we were made perfect. And all the challenges that we have are perfect. And all the mistakes that we made are perfect. Even when you look at this idea of the 3 weeks, right? You could coalesce this experience through Yosef and his brothers. Right? Yosef, maybe you could see him as the Beis Hamikdash in a way, or the holiness, and his brothers in the infighting being the Sanach Chinam that existed around the Beis Hamikdash. But that negativity that happened, some people say the brothers didn't have free will, ultimately led to the Yeshua of Am Israel. In the same way that even though the Beis Hamikdash, when you look at the whole idea of us being in Galus, being in Galus was a part of the system, right? It was part of, we had to go and collect these sparks that were in Galus, whether Gerim like myself or other entities, whatever. This was part of the Jews being in Galut, right? And redefining ourselves and becoming closer to Hashem and to enlighten the other nations. This whole experience. So how negative was the Beis Hamikdash? Obviously it's negative because it wasn't a reflection of our higher self. But in the bigger scheme of the story, it's a part of our expansionary experience in this reality. And so the idea is to say that when we look at ourselves, when we look at everyone else, what stops us from achieving our goals and achieving our dreams is because we don't see them as being a part of the life that we were given. We don't see them as part of the process of us becoming, right? And this whole idea of being able to see other people in that way. We don't see ourselves. We see ourselves as skin tones. We see ourselves as economic brackets. We see ourselves at education levels and all these elements. But at the end of the day, we're all souls trying to remove that bread of shame. And all of us are at different stages in that, right? Even when you look at the idea of Har Sinai, right? Everyone stood on a different part of that mountain. I mean, we're down here, Moshe's up there, but we all experienced God from a different angle, right? We weren't standing in a straight line. And even if we were, we still wouldn't have seen it in the same way. Everyone saw Hashem in their own specific way. But we, the world of ego, right? The world of Gaiva makes us think that if people don't see the world the way that we do, or if they're not like us or familiar to us, that there's something wrong. Because we're not connected to this idea of the original system, right? The original concept, which is we're all here to ultimately reconnect to Hashem through our own free will. And everyone has a different